Okay, welcome to the show today. I want to talk about bird rights today. If you don't know what bird rights are, you're gonna find out what they are. You probably heard someone talk about them on a podcast. Nobody ever takes the time to actually explain what they are because they're very confusing, but we're gonna get into it today. We're gonna go over the qualifying veteran free agent exception. That's what bird rights are. I'm gonna explain why they're called bird rights pretty much right now. There's also the early qualifying veteran free agency exception, and then there's the non-veteran free agency exception. They're all kind of part of bird rights. They're all part of the veteran free agency exception. So why is it called bird rights? It's called bird rights because in the 1983-84 season, the Boston Celtics found them in a position where they were over the salary cap and they wanted to sign Larry Bird again. He was at the end of his rookie contract and they didn't have any cap space to sign him. So that's when the league instituted the soft cap, when they let Larry Bird sign a max contract, the most money you could possibly spend on one player, which I believe is a quarter of the team's total payroll, I believe, or of the salary cap. Go look that up if you don't believe me. The Celtics were able to go a full entire max salary over the salary cap and thus became bird rights. You have the bird rights. The Celtics were the only one that could sign Larry Bird because he'd played on the team for 3 years. That's what bird rights are. If you've played on a team for 3 years consecutively, you as the team have bird rights to sign that player and go over the salary cap. Pretty cool. So how does that work? You can sign a max deal. You can sign a maximum. You can sign the full amount. Like I said, it's a quarter of the payroll. So you can sign a max deal and that compensation can go up by 8% every season. It goes up 8% every season because the salary cap goes up every season. It goes up a little bit because people are making more revenue, and that's just how it works. That's how the CBA works. I want to bring up, like, the last year on every contract is crazy expensive. Like we know, Russell Westbrook just opted in. I don't know when you're watching this video, but Russell Westbrook, not Brick, not Book, just re-upped his player option for $47 million. That is the last year of his contract and the most expensive year, and the Lakers are paying him every dime because they have to. And that contract can go up to 5 years, which is the biggest contract you can possibly sign. 5-year contract. You can take that contract and you can make it go up 8% up until 5 years. That's a long time. That's a pretty big contract if you ask me. It's made to encourage players to stay on the team that brought them to the dance, to dance with the person that brought you. I guess the NBA wants players to remain on the teams that they're on because it's good for loyalty and branding and creating a good fan base. I'm making this up, I don't know, but that's my guess. All right, what is the early veteran free agency exception? What are the early birds? It's really great that it was Larry Bird and they can use all these bird analogies like early bird. So what is the early bird? That's when you only have 2 years. You've only done it for 2 years. You only played on that team for 2 years. You can't do the full bird exception, but you can do the early bird. But what's the difference? Okay, instead, you can only sign up to a 4 max length, a 4-year max length, okay, instead of the 5-year. But here's the bad part. The salary's different. You're not signing a max contract. Nuh-uh, I'm sorry. So what you're getting is 175% of the player's last season on the prior contract. So whatever you were signed to, let's say you were on a $5 million deal, not very much, and let's say the max contract is a $30 million year going forward. So you're like, oh boy, I'm gonna get paid, I'm gonna get a lot of money, but they end up offering you the early bird, which is only 175% of what you were previously getting. So it ends up being like 9 million instead of the 30 million of a max contract. And let's say you were pretty good, but because you only played on that team for 2 years, they don't have the early bird. So you can either sign it, you can do the early bird, and they can go over the cap and sign you for 9 million, or you can say, sorry guys, you do not have this room to sign me. We're already over the salary cap, and with this exception, it's only 2 years, so I'm only getting $9 million. I might wait, I might sign a 1-year deal. I might sign a 1-year deal, play another year, play really well, and then they can sign me to the full early bird and I can get a max, but I might not. I might just go to free agency and see what I can get. And then there's the non-qualifying veteran free agency exception, and that is called the non-bird. It's got nothing to do with bird. 1 single year. You've only played on the team 1 single year, and what's the difference between that? Your pay only increases 5%. Instead of the previous 2, they were 8% every year. I assume you can sign a 4-year deal. I assume you can still sign a 4-year deal, but how much does the salary go up? Let's go back to our example, the guy making $5 million. It can only go up 120%. So you can only make like $6 million or 120% of your minimum salary that you could could possibly make. There's a minimum salary depending on how many years you've been in the league. There's a minimum salary for you. And that's also a trade exception, but I'm not going into that today. But it's not very much. Chances are 120% of whatever you're making the previous year is probably what it's going to be. So that's not really great either. I don't know who would really take this deal. Maybe it's your best option, but teams are kind of incentivized to re-sign you. Maybe they've only had you for 1 year, so they have to do the non-bird, and they say, hey, you're making $5 million this year, we can offer you $6 million, and then we can go over the cap. If you want to stay, if you want to play with us, maybe we can do pretty well. We're already going over the cap. We have a lot of guys. We're paying a lot of money. Do you want to stay? So you kind of have to figure out what your situation is. Ultimately, though, you do want that qualifying veteran free agent exception, the bird rights, because you can get a max deal. The team can go over the salary cap a whole lot of money, like $30 million. One thing I also do want to bring up is you can trade someone's bird rights. For instance, James Harden was traded to the Houston Rockets 1 year before he was a free agent. The Rockets had his bird rights, so he was able to sign a max deal. He was playing for Oklahoma City the previous 3 years, but his bird rights were traded, so it was as if he was playing on the Rockets those years. So then he was able to sign a max deal, and the Houston Rockets were able to go over the cap. Take, for instance, LeBron James. So when LeBron went to Miami, and then he went back to Cleveland as a free agent, his bird rights reset. When he signed in Cleveland, he was signing as a free agent. He was signing with room. So let's talk about Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis went to the Los Angeles Lakers. He was traded to the Los Angeles Lakers. So the Lakers had his bird rights. So he had a player option that year. He said, no, I'm not going to take my player option. And then the Lakers were able to sign him to a $190 million deal. That was more than his player option, right? And they were able to sign him to that $190 million deal because when he got traded, the Pelicans had traded his bird rights as well. So they were able to take that $190 million deal and go over the salary cap because they had his bird rights acquired from the Pelicans. I hope this was clear. It's all very confusing. I hope it makes a little bit of sense to you, but basically, if you're on a team for 3 years, boy oh boy, are you lucky, because now someone has your bird rights. So even if the team that has your bird rights doesn't want to re-sign you, they can trade those bird rights, which are inevitably going to be valuable to another team because they can go over the cap with that money. I hope you liked this video. I hope it was clear. Be good to your mothers. I'm very warm. It's hot in LA.